and welcome back to Ag on the Edge, the podcast where we're taking back the conversation about Ventura County farming. I'm your host, Louise Lampera, and today we're being joined by a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Lisa Tate. Lisa is a fifth-generation farmer growing lemons and coffee in the Heritage Valley. Have a listen. Lisa has been a friend of mine since, I started on my ag-adjacent journey.
I remember when you first got hired.
And learning about agriculture. And she has been one of the people who has educated me, guided me, inspired me. A fifth-generation farmer in Ventura County and an entrepreneur and policy expert. So welcome, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, I'm so happy that you are doing this because I have been saying we need to tell our story for so many years now. So finally we get to tell our story.
And you actually are one of there were three people that inspired this podcast. And we were all in the same meeting. And you actually were one of the loudest voices saying
I always am.
Which is what I love. But talking about how, the general public does not understand what it's really like to farm and what it's really like in Ventura County, which is different from farming.
Very different.
Anywhere else. So I want to jump in. And like I said, you're a fifth generation farmer. Right? Your family farms lemons. And lemons, the ag commissioner, county ag commissioner, just released the 2023 crop report, which is a report that the county puts out every year that tells everyone the gross revenues for agriculture in Ventura County. And Ventura County, one of the top 10 ag producing counties in the state of California, $2.1 billion in gross revenues, and lemons were number 3 in the list of top crops, coming in at $203 million, I believe, last year. But
that's part of the story.
That's only part of the story. So,
yeah.
So I'd love to hear.
Well, I think that, it's great to know how much money we bring in. That's wonderful. But it doesn't matter how much you bring in if you're spending more than you're bringing in, which is the case of lemons. So for my farm in general, just kind of some of my numbers I wrote down. On a per acre, my per acre income is maybe about almost $15,000 an acre. So great, that sounds wonderful. But my expenses are $17,000 an acre. So when you look at that, I'm losing $3,000 an acre on lemons every year. And when you say you're a 100-acre farm, that's $300,000 a year. How long can you sustain that? Not very long as a business owner.
And the crop report doesn't share expenses, right?
It doesn't share expenses. And so also that's not the money that's going towards taxes because we're writing off all of those expenses too. So it's not as great a picture as it gets presented. And if you also just look at the situation where if you just look at inflation over the years, the amount of income hasn't gone up, but we know just inflation is going up, 2% a year, let's say. So we're losing that amount every year on top of that. And that's not even taking into account our fertilizer prices are going up. Our labor prices are just, crazy. Our water is expensive, so there's just, our prices keep increasing, but our income is, I guess, decreasing if you look at it from an inflation standpoint.
So in terms of, the average person, the average Ventura County resident who's not a farmer, this is like working a job where you make an income, right? Your salary, but your salary, you've never gotten a pay raise. And in the meantime, you're spending twice as much at the grocery store and twice as much for your utilities.
Well, I think it's actually bleaker than that because I don't get a salary. At the end of the day, I get what's left over. And if there's negative left over, I have to pay the negative in order to keep my business going. So it's actually, I'm paying to work these days when it comes to lemons.
So you're paying for the privilege to grow lemons.
100%. I pay a lot of money to be able to work.
And when did this start?
Well, we were making great money on lemons, and that's why everybody planted lemons, and so it was wonderful for a long time. But then politics got involved on a federal level, and our representatives decided to allow Argentinian lemons to be imported into the United States, and so now they're bringing lemons in. They don't have the same costs associated with growing lemons, nor do they care. I just found this out last week that they actually don't even have a buyer when they send these ships over. They just send the lemons over, and then they get to the United States, and there are these brokers, and the brokers, they make a profit off of selling it no matter what they sell it for. So they're making money, but even the growers in Argentina aren't making enough to be able to support themselves and to cover their costs. And it's flooding our United States market with lemons that are so cheap that we can't compete in that global economy. And so it's been really, really challenging. And just with that one country coming in, it just kind of did destroy our lemon industry. So you'll see farms all over the county. I mean, hundreds of acres this summer have been removed. And when you talk about removing a crop, a permanent crop like a tree crop, you're talking about removing it. So you don't have that anymore. It's not like a row crop where, next season we'll replant and we'll have spinach or whatever. No. We won't have lemons again for another 20 years at the point we decide to grow them again.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Why? And I think what this is getting at is that the difference between row crops, right, which our listeners heard the conversation with Greg Lewis with Duda Farms and producing celery, etc. That's a crop that you plant it, you harvest it all in 1 year, and sometimes multiple times a year. But what you do is orchard.
I do orchards.
And talk a little bit about what the difference is in investment and timeline.
Yeah. So farming, permanent crops have a very inelastic demand curve. And so what that means is we can't shift with the market. It's not like we're a factory where, people don't want to buy lemons, so we'll just stop growing lemons. We can't stop growing lemons without killing our trees. So if we stop watering them, if we stop fertilizing them and they die, then it will take us decades to get back into that production. And so when I am planting a crop, I actually am not even planting these trees for myself because I probably won't be profitable for them in my lifetime. I'm planting them so that my children and my grandchildren will make money off of them. So it's a very long-term investment. Like right now, I'm removing oranges that haven't been profitable in quite a long time, and I'm actually putting oranges in. I'm gambling that in 20 years, people will want to buy our oranges. So it's extremely risky, and the investment's huge. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to plant a new orchard, and then you have to wait a minimum of 5 years, but more like 10 years before it's in production. So that's a long time to go where you have all these costs without having any income coming in for them. And it was especially difficult when you get hit by a fire and you lose so many of your trees. And so it was a double slam because we had a crop that was no longer profitable, and we had our profitable crop, which was avocados, get burned at the same time. So it's been very, very difficult on farmers because of that since the fire.
Since the Thomas
fire, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there was no way, clearly, if I'm understanding this right, for the farmers who planted the lemon trees, say a decade and a half ago, 2 decades ago even, they took a gamble. They took a look at market forces, projected what they could, decided lemons were a good investment, and then when that federal policy changed, and a single federal policy,
one policy,
right, changed, now all of a sudden every projection that they made, everything they tried to forecast, turned out to not be true in driving profitability. So now you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what could happen 20 years from now, and what decisions do I make today?
And also, what could happen, but what can I make money on? And that's, the options are getting smaller and smaller and smaller for a lot of different reasons. Well, one is it's more expensive to farm. So crops we're used to be able to make a profit on, you can't anymore. There's a lot more pest pressure. There's less options for us to be able to handle pest issues. E-commerce is really bringing in a lot of pests. You know, you can just buy a plant off of Amazon or Etsy, and it gets shipped to you, and it could be covered in bugs that you then, plant this beautiful tree in your backyard, and now you have inadvertently taken out the whole lemon industry or the whole citrus industry, for example, which is actually what's happening right now in Santa Paula.
And that actually, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that, you talked about the double whammy, right? That farming, particularly on the west side of Ventura County, has experienced the lemon market from that one federal policy change to the Thomas fire. But there's a third.
There's been a lot of stuff,
right? There's a third hit specifically to our citrus. And could you talk about that?
Yeah, so there is a little tiny insect called the Asian citrus psyllid, and by itself it's not harmful, but it can carry a bacteria called huanglongbing. And it's an invasive pest, and it has really destroyed citrus crops all over the world. What it does, that little insect, if it's carrying the disease, when it bites into the plant to eat the plant, it infects the plant, and it's an incurable disease, so the plant dies, and then it can be spread. So citrus growers have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, the government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to eradicate this pest, and we haven't been able to. We've been trying to keep it out. We've been trying to come up with a cure, and we just haven't been successful. We're getting close, but we're not there yet. And so about a decade ago, I think the insect finally made its way to California, and we were able to keep it out by growers coordinated area-wide pesticide sprays. So we would spray in a very organized manner to try to keep them from having any place they could go. And once you spray, hopefully you keep that population down enough so that they can't grow and reproduce and infect a lot of different trees in the area. And so far, this disease hasn't been found in any commercial farms, but I think it was in November, there was one positive bug found in, I can't remember if it was a leaf or a bug, but anyway, in a backyard in Santa Paula. And so that set off a quarantine. And unfortunately, this quarantine is when there's no exit strategy. Once you're in it forever. There's no way to get out, because there's no way to prove that your trees don't have the disease. And so unless there's a cure, this is it for us.
Until there's a cure, hopefully.
Until there's a cure, this is it. Or I guess until it's just so widespread in California that there's no it's not a quarantine anymore because it's just everywhere. But the problem is that it kills these trees, and people don't understand that in their backyards, it makes a huge difference. What you bring in to your county makes a huge difference. I mean, we saw it with bark beetle in the forest. Just one little bug can just take out so much, and so we're seeing that. Here in backyards. And so the ag commissioner had gone around and they tested all of the trees, and USDA came in and California Department of Food and Ag came in, and they all were coordinating these efforts to remove the trees that have this disease so that they don't spread into the commercial groves. And for the most part, everybody, all of the neighbors were really great and understood and were supportive. And so that's one of the things I love, is everybody working together on projects, like this, because this is a solvable problem. We just all need to be responsible and not move, plant material from county to county. We just need to keep it, where it is. But anyway, this disease has potential to really, really hurt us. And it already has. So like what a quarantine means in this case is, now before I can move my fruit to a packing house that's outside of the quarantine, I have to do a pesticide spray within 2 weeks of harvest. So that's difficult to coordinate that, but also it's an added expense. So there goes that just, made everything worse. It's also a pesticide spray that nobody wants. We don't want to spray for this bug. We didn't bring it in. All of these invasive pests, they're not coming in. They always start in these backyards. They're always starting in people's backyards. They don't start on a commercial grove. So if we as a community can just not move that plant material around, not order it off the nursery, just go to a nursery. The nurseries are all checked. They're certified. Go to those nurseries and get your stuff from there. Or if there's a special plant you really want, just go to the ag commissioner's office and have them check it. That's all you have to do. So that could save $100 million industry just by doing that.
Yeah. I know in Florida because it first hit Florida, right? And in Florida it decimated the citrus industry to the tune of over $8 billion a year, which again, Ventura, all of our ag is 2.1. So that would just destroy all the entire county gross revenues.
And the jobs. I mean, that's the other side of it. These are people who depend on this money to survive. They now can't pay their bill. They can't pay their employees. They can't pay their bills. There's a whole economic system involved in this that now has nowhere to go.
Yeah. And and then when you talk about how, when that insect, that pest made it to California, again, it didn't show up in a shipment.
It didn't fly here itself.
It did not slowly work its way.
It's not a good flyer.
It came when somebody brought a plant or plant material from Florida to California.
Or somewhere that already had this.
And then is Ventura County the only county in California under a quarantine?
No, there's other southern counties that are in quarantines.
Okay. So,
but I do have to say, actually, it was much stricter what we would have to do in order to ship our fruit and to pack our fruit. But with the coordination of the Central Valley, the growers in the Central Valley and their willingness to play and help support us down here, we were able to loosen some of those regulations and allow for growers down here to only have to do one spray versus two, or different mitigations. So that's just a huge plug, that coordination among, or maybe competitors, but we're all farmers and we all see that we need to help each other, and they did. And I think that's a great story right there. We're working together as an industry to try to help each other
throughout the entire state.
The whole state, yeah.
And so for these but it's not you guys ultimately, right? It's not farmers ultimately that set what has to be done.
Oh, we never get to set. Like, if they would just let me make the rules, it would all be so smooth.
So who is it? Is it the ag commissioner? Is it the federal government?
It's the federal government, along with the Department of Pesticide, the California Department of Pesticide Regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who decide?
Yeah, I mean, there's all these rules, but the ag commissioner is the one responsible for enforcing those rules, making sure we're following those rules. And for example, like when you spray, I always say, I call pesticides medicine. To me, that's what they are, because my tree's sick and I need to get it healthy. And so the way that I think about pesticides, it's kind of like we have, when you get sick as a human, you go to the doctor, and the doctor looks at you and checks you out and prescribes you medication. It's the same way on our trees. Our doctors are called pest advisors. They have to be certified. They have to go through a rigorous educational process and certification.
They're licensed.
They're
right?
licensed.
They're monitored.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they have to retest all the time. And they're very knowledgeable. And they're not just knowledgeable in pests, but they're knowledgeable in plant systems, biology, all that, and in ecosystems. And so they'll come out to your farm and they will give them a checkup. And if they find that they're sick in some way, either something's eating them or something is, a bacteria or virus, it's all eating it, it's all a parasite of some sort, then they write a prescription. And then you can take that to your certified spray company, and you can't buy these pesticides without that prescription.
Okay.
Just like you can't go to the pharmacy and get medicine without a prescription. And so then you take it and you have your crew, or you hire, in our case, we hire a crew to do it because it's very specialized and I want to make sure it's done correctly. And they conduct the sprays following the exact directions of the prescription. You don't take 2 pills when you're only supposed to take 1. It's the same type of a thing. And then they report it, which you don't even have to do this as a human. You don't have to report what medicines you took, but we now report it to the ag commissioner's office. It's actually the state. And every single thing we spray gets reported, and the ag commissioner's staff is responsible for checking to make sure every part of that process is done correctly.
So did you take the medicine as prescribed?
Exactly.
Right.
And they'll come out and do checks, random checks. And if you are, one time my employees, they don't like wearing the gloves because they're very uncomfortable and it's hot and they sweat. And the ag commissioner caught them wearing the wrong kind of gloves. They were wearing gloves with the wrong kind, so we got a fine. And I had to talk to my employee. I know that these gloves are uncomfortable, but this is what keeps you safe, And so that's why you have to do it. We have to follow all of the procedures, wear the proper protection, make sure there's no bees flying around that time we're spraying, make sure the wind's not blowing so there's no drift. I mean, everything has to be done exactly correctly to be able to protect the food, the people, the community, just very safe, methodical process.
Yeah, but and I think what it highlights is that yes, farmers do have to utilize these tools and resources in order to produce healthy plants, which then produce our food. But then, and there's oversight, multiple layers of oversight for
I
that.
report to 24 government agencies.
Wow.
A lot.
When do you have time to actually farm?
And that's the government agencies. There's also private ones that we do because like our customers like Costco or Walmart, they want additional oversight. So we have to get audits. And in my audits, I've been dinged for things such as there were too many turkey vultures in your orchard. I don't know how I'm supposed to control the birds, but it was noted, and I got points off on my food safety because of that.
Wow.
We're doing regular water lab sampling to make sure that the irrigation water is clean and healthful. I mean, there is I don't think there's safer food anywhere in the world. I guarantee there's not safer food anywhere in the world. We have such a robust oversight situation going on here in California.
Wow.
And I pay for all of this. I pay for the inspectors to come inspect through different, assessments.
That's part of that
and I
17,000.
pay for the private, that nobody else is paying to check up on me. I have to pay for that to get inspected, to then have it shown that, look, you're following all the rules.
That's all part of that what you're estimating is a $17,000 per acre expense, right?
Yeah.
For which then you're only able to recoup 15.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And digging
and
into
the way
a
that
hole.
and the way that farming works, it's kind of different than other businesses. It's everybody gets to take money off. Everybody gets paid, and then whatever's left is what the farmer gets. And sometimes the farmer gets left with a lot of money. You hope that's the goal, but more often than not these days you get left with no money, or you end up owing money at the end. Wow. And so and that brings us into the subject of, that's why you're seeing so many family farms that aren't able to make it, because how can you sustain that as a family? You're a small business owner. You can't do that for very long. And you can also make so much more. I looked up last night just kind of the average, what farms were going for in Ventura County. Mm-hmm. And the cheapest one I could find was $9 million. And $9 million, who can buy that? Who can start that business? Like, I started my little coffee business, I think I spent $100,000. That was a lot to me, but that's a doable amount to start a business. You can get a loan for that. Mm-hmm. Who can get a loan for $9 million?
Particularly if you're not coming from already having the collateral.
There's no promise of, in fact, you're almost guaranteed you're not going to make any money. How can you pay that back? So as a farmer, as a family farmer, there is a lot of pressure to sell your farm, because you could make a lot more money investing. Just in a savings account, you could make more money.
Yeah. Take
that money and go. So the people you're seeing farming are people who are farming because they love it, because they're part of a legacy, because that's what they want to be doing, not because they're making any money off of it these days. And it scares me as a Ventura County resident, because I love our farms. But I'm scared, because when who's buying those farms? Really, who can buy that? Only big corporations can buy that.
It definitely doesn't seem to pan out as being something where a lender would look at your business plan and be like, yeah, let's fund this.
Well, you can't even get a loan these days, because you can't get fire insurance.
Which insurance is a whole other issue. And I actually think, because I know you've been actively involved at the state level on insurance, so I think we're probably going to invite you back just for an insurance-focused talk, because that has just been so complex and such a challenge. One thing that you mentioned, talking about, all of the oversight and what you have to do to keep your crops healthy, keep your trees healthy, and address the quarantine requirements that come down from the federal government and the state government. You mentioned indirectly, adjacent land use and how you can't impact that. But talking to farmers, what I'm hearing more and more is that it's harder and harder to farm, because the adjacent land uses, their neighbors, or what's being built next to them, is actually creating challenges. And I know you and I have talked about that. And
oh yeah. Well, it's scary. So going back to our food safety regulations. Our food safety requires that we don't have. I'll give you an example. I got marked off on my food safety because my neighbor had a wood pile. I didn't have the wood pile on my property. My neighbor had the wood pile. But there was potential for rodents to be in that wood pile that could then maybe come and be in my neighbor's property. Okay. So, let's now look at if you're in a position where you're going to be, maybe the bike path is, I don't know if everybody is up to date on the bike path, but there was an idea to put a bike path through some of the farm areas in Ventura County that would kind of be along the railroad tracks as well, but it's
out along the Santa Clara River
Valley. And it's
there.
Surrounded by farms. And that's such a lovely idea. I would love that.
I would enjoy that.
But then when you look at the impact that could have on the farms, where now in my farm plan I have to show somehow that, first of all, nobody's going to get onto my property, that nobody's going to come and bring food, gum, cigarettes, whatever
from the proposed bike path.
Somebody could eat an apple and throw it in my field. I don't know what's on that apple, and then you've now contaminated. Maybe somebody needs to go to the bathroom along the path and they're just going to run into your orchard and go, now I have a food safety issue. Trash, dogs, and there's so much potential for this contamination. And then on the other side of it, from my side, I have to be able to protect my trees from their diseases, and I can't spray safely if there's people coming and going nearby us because of drift issues. I mean, it's not what we want for our tourists, right? To be on one of those pedal rail bike things and get dumped with pesticides. That's not what we're going for here when we're trying to bring tourists in. So there's a lot of issues that come with that. And I also just safety concerns, we have tractors, we have saws, we have all kinds of stuff going on. And children love tractors. Imagine a kid rushing in. We have wells, we have ditches, it's a factory is what it is. It's a beautiful factory, but it's a factory. And if you wouldn't put a bike path in the middle of a factory. Right. It just wouldn't be a safe thing to do for so many reasons. And so that's an example of it. I mean, as soon as, say there's a housing development that goes in, as soon as you put a housing development in, now you've got issues with drift and neighbors and
or even just complaining about the noise, the early morning activity, the lights.
The smell.
Yeah.
Fertilizer doesn't smell good, Yeah. There's just, wind machines are loud in the middle of the night.
Oh, to prevent the frost damage and the like. Yeah, yeah.
There's just a lot to it. And so that's it's not a national park. It's not a place that we have just preserved to be our place to go and visit and marvel at. It's a little factory. Each of these are little factories.
I know you have another role in Ventura County where you're on the Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee. And appointed by the Board of Supervisors to provide guidance, right? And to advise the Board of Supervisors on issues impacting ag. When something like that, hey, we're going to permit this housing development right next to these farm fields or orchards, or we're going to permit this bike path that runs adjacent, or a school, or something like that, right? Because all of these things require permits. Is it on the county and the folks coming in to address these problems? Who is stuck addressing those problems?
Oh, it's always the farmer. I even asked the ag commissioner, if there's drift or if there's a spray issue and somebody makes a complaint on, even though the farm was here first. She said, oh no, absolutely, the farmer would be the one.
Or
that
even
is in charge.
Even something as less alarming than a potential pesticide conflict, but even dust.
Oh yeah.
Because as you're working the soil, right?
Oh yeah.
There will be dust.
Again, it's a factory.
Yeah.
There, you wouldn't put a tourist destination in the middle of a factory.
No matter how pretty that factory may be.
It's beautiful, and it's a wonderful. I mean, it's an entire ecosystem going on in there. It's a marvel, and I understand sharing it. And actually, I would love to be able to share it more. Or maybe I think that's maybe one of our solutions in Ventura County. Maybe we can loosen up some of the restrictions so that we can actually invite more people in for specialized events, or because it's like, if you are going to allow a tour, it's agritourism, a bike path through the farmland. It's agritourism, a pedal bike rail thing.
I've seen the marketing.
Yeah, through the ag land. It's agritourism. So how come they're allowed to do that right next to us, but we're not allowed to?
So what do you mean? What do you mean farmers aren't allowed to? So if I wanted to bring a bunch of my friends out and you to your property and have, say, a dinner in the orchards or whatever it may be, and pay you, we can't do that?
Not if it's over 75 people.
Okay.
So I'm sure many people have heard of SOAR, and SOAR is what do you call it? It's a regulation. It was an initiative to protect our ag land and our open space, and it's done a phenomenal job of doing that.
Save open space and agricultural resources.
Okay,
right?
and it really has, because I feel like without that, or without something like that, we would just be a suburb. We would end up being a suburb of Los Angeles, and we would have houses everywhere and buildings everywhere. I mean, that's what we would become. So I believe it is important to have some protectionary stuff going on, but it's very strict. And so there's not much we can do to be creative. So it's hard, because in my family, since we've been here so long, we have a historical landmark house. It's landmark 114, if anybody wants to look into it. It's a beautiful Victorian house. And I want to share it with the community. But I can't, because I can't bring people into it because we're zoned for agriculture there. And in order to change the zoning, it would have to go through a huge permitting process where we'd have to do environmental impact reports, traffic studies. We'd have to be ADA compliant. We would have to, first we'd have to make sure our lot is certified and legal, which is another
And what does
thing.
that mean?
Let's start at the beginning here. Okay. Some of the properties in Ventura County that were purchased by ancestors of long ago, before the planning department existed, these properties were never subdivided. And so they're non-legal lots. And it's kind of like it's not the best example, but it's like you're not required to get your driver's license. But it's not illegal for you to not get your driver's license. But you can't do anything if you don't have your driver's license.
So they're grandfathered in, right? There's a deed.
They have a deed. They own it. They're on the parcel maps. We're paying taxes on everything. But it's never been officially declared this is a unit in a surveyor's concept. Okay. And at the planning department, that is what counts. Is it a legal lot? And so on many of my farms, I found out that we aren't on a legal lot. And what that means is you can't do anything. You can't get a permit. They won't give you a permit. At the county, you can't sell your property. And so in order to do any of these things, you need to go and make your lot legal.
Okay.
And that is quite a process. And it can be quite expensive. So my one property ended up being $15,000 to get that one certified legal. I actually found.
And how big was that property?
That property, well, it was multiple parcels and it was very complicated. But I was able to do it partially because I found a recorded deed that the county didn't even have knowledge of.
Okay.
So I was able to show them, oh, look, here's a deed, and then you can give me an extra parcel. Because when you have, there's another side of it too, is you're limited based on these invisible boundaries by how many houses you can build on that. So you can have one main house, an ADU, and a farm worker house on one parcel. So if you can have more parcels, then you can have more houses.
Okay.
So I was able to find a little 1 acre spot. So I'm able to have a second house on that property now in case like my sister and I want to both have a house on that property.
Okay.
That would be an example of why it's an advantage to have more parcels. But anyway, the process of going through that is I was fortunate because the county had accidentally in the past given us permits for different things. And if you can show you were given a permit accidentally, that speeds up the process and you don't have to go through a much bigger situation. And
because according to, is it local regulation, law? If you're not quote unquote a legal lot, then they're not supposed to give you a permit for anything. Mm-hmm. Like, and at what level? I mean, you need to get a permit to change out a water heater. Does that mean that if I have one of these illegal lots and my water heater dies, I am showering in cold water until I go through this entire process? There's no workaround.
Nope.
Wow.
I mean, you could do it without a permit and hope you don't get caught.
Which we would never advocate for. But
I mean, well, it's the same situation. Like if we had a well break, what do we do? You know, if we have our septic tank goes bad. I mean, it's scary, and most people don't even know that you need to do this. So we needed money. And I wanted to sell. I have like a little detached portion of property after the fire. I was desperate for money, and I was going to sell off a piece of land, and I couldn't do that until I went through this process, and that's what got me started on the whole thing. And guess what? I still haven't been able to.
When did you start?
I think it's been about 4 years now.
4 years.
Yeah.
Of going through and. So what exactly are some of the steps, right? You talked about survey.
You have to, they look at all the deeds that are recorded deeds that were associated with the property. And then they have to map it out. And basically that's all it is saying, yep, this is the map. We all agree that this is the official map.
But couldn't they just do that with assessor's records? Since those are what the taxes are based on?
No, apparently not.
Okay. and clearly I am not an assessor.
Well, the assessor's office and the planning department legally aren't even allowed to speak to each other. Okay. So no, they don't use the same information. Okay. And even when you look on the assessor's parcel maps, because that's what I always thought, oh look, I have you can have multiple assessor's parcels on one surveyor's parcel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a special survey subdivision planning documentation.
And unfortunately, that cost gets thrown onto the property owner. And
the process time delay as well.
Yeah, and it's not our fault that when the county developed the planning department, we were here before them, you know?
Right.
I had a situation where I wanted to get a mailbox on one of our houses, and so I went to the post office, and they said, oh, you need to go to the city. And I went to the city, and they said, oh, no, you're in the county. You need to go to the county. So I went to the county, and they said, you need to go to the planning department. And I went to the planning department, and they said, oh, well, there's no house there. And I said, well, there is a house there. And I said, it's been there since 1928. And they said, oh, that was before the planning department existed. I said, oh, okay, well, can I get my mailbox then? Well, no, you'd have to bring that 1928 house up to code, to modern day code. I said, you know, there's a house there. I can show you a Google image of it. And they're like, well, no, it doesn't matter. And I said, I've been paying taxes on this house this whole time. Oh yeah, well, our departments don't talk to each other. So I was like, you want me to do all this so I can have a mailbox here?
And it just to, make sure that people understand, it's not simply a matter of when they say you need to bring this house built in 1928 up to current code?
Current code.
Or the earliest code?
No, current code.
Current code, which in some cases is impossible without destroying.
I'd have to tear down the house.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're talking major changes in building design requirements, building construction material requirements, and wow. So you actually got off cheap. Not to make light of your $15,000 that you had to pay, but if you had to bring that house up to current code, that would have been a $500,000 mailbox at the end of the day.
At least, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Post office box is much cheaper.
Yes, that's
it. Wow. And then so I'm also thinking, like what this issue means for, because farming, it's a business. You have constant ongoing operations. You have constant ongoing improvements, right? So the barn that was put there before the planning department existed, you're going to at some point need to fix it or expand it or build a new one. But you can't get permits to do that.
Not if you're not on.
Not if you are on an illegal lot, and surely we can't be the only county in existence to where parcels were formed before a planning department.
No, but I think we're the most strict from what I hear about how we do it and how. I don't know. I can't speak on other counties and how they do it.
Well, and that may be something that, we look into having a conversation on another,
I have
podcast.
My family, not just me, but like my extended family owns 8 ranches in the Santa Clara, Fillmore area. 5 of those were non-legal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we're still going through the process on 2 of them.
Wow. Wow. And I
didn't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know it till I went to try to do something. Till I went to try to get a mailbox.
And the average person wouldn't know, right?
How would you know?
You would assume, not being aware that different county departments operate separately, that, hey, I'm paying taxes to the county.
Yeah, I'm set. I'm good.
Right.
Everything's right.
And so wow, that's a whole level of, awareness and a whole issue that could be pretty pervasive and people don't even know. So, wow. So back to looking more towards the future. And, we talked a little bit about, agriculture and what could be done in terms of like ag tourism and expanding, because I'm assuming you can't keep going forever paying out of pocket per acre.
No.
Right? So what's next? What?
Well, first I want to go, my family was really good about diversifying crops. So we weren't 100% dependent on lemons. And that's one way farmers mitigate their risk is by having multiple crops. So we were fortunate to have avocados. Now, unfortunately, our avocados burned and that was its own thing. But, we've been able to maintain our situation through our avocado income. That will have its own ups and downs. Mm-hmm. That will have its own pests as well. So one of the things that we need to do just in general is be innovative and have new crops that coming in, new ideas, new strategies. And so that was kind of how our coffee venture started. But I say that to coffee because the agritourism piece is important to me in the sense of my coffee business, because I get a lot of visitors from Los Angeles that want to come and see my coffee farm.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, because coffee,
yes,
right? And I am clearly addicted. I mean, like Latin and Central and South America, right?
Tropics, really.
Tropics,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Ventura County's not tropics.
No, it is not.
But we're growing coffee here.
Well, we're trying to.
So what?
How? Well, this crop actually came about because of that Asian citrus load that we talked about. We knew we were going to have some issues before we even knew about Argentina. We knew we were going to have some issues in the future. We're constantly trying to use our crystal ball to figure out what's coming in. And I sit through seminars every week on what people are doing in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, we had hundreds of people at avocado training.
Oh, wow.
And so we're constantly getting trained on the newest technologies, on the newest ways to grow, on the best ways to grow, how to grow more with less, how to make your fruit look pretty, because that's what's really important to the buyers. So that's huge. And so we were scared of what was going to happen with lemons. And so we said, well, let's try a different crop. And we ended up just planting about 1.5 acres of coffee as a complete experiment. Let's see how it goes. And so we did, and it took 4 years before we got any type of crop out of it. And we had to learn about everything, and everything about coffees in Spanish. So, but actually Hawaii has coffee stuff. And the other thing is we have like pesticides. The way pesticides are approved is they're very specific to the crop you can use them on. They have to be tested specifically on that crop in order for it to be approved. And they have to be approved in that state. So nobody's going around trying to approve pesticides for use on coffee in California.
Right.
So I am very limited to what I can put on that coffee, because it has to be something that was approved for use in Hawaii on coffee, but it's also approved for use for something else
in
California.
Okay.
And so, so I have a list that I was able to find a few things that you can do. Fortunately, we haven't had pests because it's a new crop and they haven't made their way here yet. So we were just trying to mitigate our risk. Like, let's see if we can grow something else here. And so we found out, yeah, we can. They need some babying. This is not their natural habitat. And because of that, I mean, that's what a farmer does, right? We create an environment where things can grow. And so I am trying to create this environment where this can grow, and on hot days they need to be kept cool, and on cool days they need to be kept warm. And so we're working on it, and so far they've made it, and they're producing just excellent coffees. I mean, coffees we can really be proud of, which makes me excited because there's potential there. You know, I envision this area, my dreams, right? You know, what Napa Valley is to wine, that's what Ventura County is to coffee. I mean, could you imagine? That would be so much fun. Little coffee shops and little touristy trinket stores and just tours of farms and weddings and coffee orchard. I mean, very cool. So, so I began to embark on this. I realized very quickly, it was actually during COVID. I needed help harvesting. And I just put on Facebook to my friends, anybody who wants to come, I need help harvesting. And I had 50 people show up that day. And we socially distanced and masked and everybody was separate, but it was an outdoor event where we could come and do something. And we were also desperate to do something. So I had a great turnout and everybody had so much fun. They said, I would pay to do this. I was like, okay. So that got my wheels turning and I was like, okay, let's see if people want to come. So I went on Eventbrite and I posted in a coffee tour event and it filled up. I mean, they just keep, people want it. And the more I do this, the more I realize that people in LA are desperate to be on farms. They want that experience. They want to learn. And they want to learn where their food comes from. And also, I've noticed a lot of people are really scared of their food. You know, they're so worried about pesticides and is it organic or is it non-organic or, you know, and I don't think they need to be scared. And so it's a great opportunity for them to meet a farmer and realize, we're all people, we're neighbors, you know, and then also to realize that, they really are. There really is a lot of stuff in place, lots of stuff in place to protect me.
Multiple layers.
I don't need to be scared of my food, you know? And so that's been a great experience for me. And I feel like we could do more of that here. And it would only help our farmers to be able to give people those experiences.
I think too, not just cutting down on the fear level, right? It's building that understanding and awareness of what it actually takes to grow your food.
Oh yeah.
And which is one thing that I really hope this podcast helps with as well. Is you know, most people think that. Well, I can't say most people, but there are people out there because I've seen their posts on social media and the like where they have no idea that an avocado is grown on a tree or what a stalk of Brussels sprouts looks like and the difference between like where we started off, row crop versus orchard, right? And what all that means. And building that awareness, you know, where people can actually come out and see that, check out this drip irrigation. Do you know how many millions of gallons of water we've saved, right? Helps them understand that, you know, farmers aren't wasting our resources.
No, you know, it's interesting about that because California Women for Agriculture, one of the groups that you and I are very involved in, we do a farm day where we go to an elementary school and we host different people in agriculture to go and teach the kids. And one of the questions the kid asks is, at what point does the sticker grow on the fruit?
No.
And I was like, wow, we really need to be here. You know, that's an honest question.
Well, it is.
And I mean, it's funny, but it's honest. And that's what we're dealing with is people who maybe are making the legislative choice that like you're voting on some of these things that really impact us, but you don't really have the whole story. You don't know it. I wouldn't drop into a doctor's office and start telling people what's wrong with them because that's not where my expertise is. So we can't just assume because we have a backyard and we grow some plants or vegetables in our backyard that we know what it's like to grow on a much bigger scale because it's a very, very different thing and there's a lot more regulations and there's a lot more that goes into it. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I've had jobs in lots of places, and this one is complicated. This is a very complicated job to have because there's so many so many things going on in so many different areas.
I mean, you're a scientist, you're
Geologist.
a geologist, a botanist,
A politician.
a chemist, you're right, a politician, right, a policy expert, a marketer,
a labor expert,
Yep.
HR. I mean, you do it all. Insurance, you do it all. And so there's a lot to know. And I love sharing that information with people. And I also love funny things like, teaching them, your orange juice, I'm sure it says non-GMO on it. And I just tell them, there's not an orange on the planet that's genetically modified. So it's fun to kind of break some of those fears down. Like, that's marketing. That is not a real concern.
Right. And just because I actually had the exact conversation with my husband 2 weeks ago, because I was putting in, like a second round of green beans and whatnot, right? And the little tag there, from the 6-pack I got at Green Thumb, it said hybrid non-GMO.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's impossible. That's impossible. Because every plant that we harvest for food has been genetically modified by selective breeding.
Sure.
If nothing else.
Just like we do with our dogs.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's a scary term, but we need people to understand what it means, because it's not scary.
It's not scary.
Ultimately.
It's not scary. And I mean, I don't think there's any commercially produced fruit or vegetable that is genetically modified. So we make a big deal out of this, but it's really not a big deal in that sense.
Yeah. So for your coffee business, right? Is it are you because it clearly it's not you pick and I have learned from you, it's called the cherry.
Yes, the coffee cherry.
and it's the seed inside that's actually the coffee bean, becomes the coffee bean. But I can't just sneak into your orchard, grab a bucket of the cherries, go home, brew up my coffee. Right? There's a process.
There's a minimum of a 4-month process after it comes off the plant.
Okay. And do you do that?
I do that.
Okay.
And there's some question on what I do is on the edge, I think, of what's allowed and what's not allowed. I've been told on the record that it is allowed, so I'm not breaking as far as I know, I'm not breaking any rules, but it is kind of a gray area. And
so it's considered processing or pre-processing?
Well, it's called coffee processing. That's what it's called.
Okay.
But there are some allowances for some agricultural things to happen on the farm.
Okay.
But what you do when you process coffee is I have a machine that takes that cherry off. It goes into buckets of water. It ferments for a few days.
Okay.
And then we take it out. We dry it for 2 weeks. And then it sits kind of like how wine has to sit and develop its flavors.
Okay.
It sits for at least 2 months in special grain bags. And it's called Reposo. And they just rest. And then after that, there's almost like a peanut shell over the seed that you have to take off first. So I have another machine that takes that peanut shell off, and then then it's ready to roast. So it's a long process, and so that's one of my concerns is in the latest version of SOAR, it allowed for these small processing facilities to be allowable
up to
use
10 acres total in the county.
Okay.
Not 10 acres each, right? But
I thought it was 12 acres.
But the entire county, 10 or 12 acres.
Okay, yeah. And that includes what's already being done, what had already previously been approved. So it's probably closer. I mean, I don't know what it is.
Right.
Yeah, so the county came and to our Ag Policy Advisory Committee meeting, and they presented the ordinance, how they would want it to be written. And we did have some major concerns about it. First of all, we were so grateful that it was even a possibility, because prior to this, it was not even a possibility. You weren't allowed to do it, period. And I think it had stemmed from, there was a small goat farmer that wanted to make soap out of their goat's milk.
Oh, okay.
And they just wanted to do it in their garage, basically, their little backyard. Well, not allowed. And so,
Wow.
and that's how strict we're talking, right? There's no safety issue involved in that. The little farmer wants to take their goat, and just makes them, there's no food safety issue, nothing, but they weren't allowed. So that's where this stemmed from. But the problem is that it's still so strict that I'm not really sure that it's going to allow for more than a situation like that to occur. For example, if you need to build a facility to do that, I don't think it's really possible. The restrictions are so tight, like you can't take any agricultural land, and you can't build it on any prime agricultural land. Well, one could argue that most of the land here that you could build anything on would be considered prime agriculture, could be considered prime agricultural land. You can't remove any native vegetation. Well, any open space is going to have native vegetation. So, and then you can't hook up to any sewage system. So that really limits where you can make this happen. And so in my eyes, the only possibility would be if you have a barn that's already built, but you would still have to meet all of the code on that barn before you would be able to get your processing permit.
I'm guessing, tying back, you'd have to be on a legal lot.
Oh, absolutely. 100% you'd have to be on a legal lot. And you would have to, you'd have to meet the ADA requirements and the environmental impact report. Everything, you have to meet all that stuff. Yeah. Right. So if you're talking about allowing a small grower like me who wants to do a little coffee processing unit, essentially out of my office, is that's what I'm doing. If you're talking about a little goat farm that wants to do their soap making out of their garage, then yeah, that works. But if you want to actually do something that's going to be impactful for the community and the possibility of bringing in a new crop, well, that's going to limit us to what we can do, because I can grow a lot of things in Ventura County. But can I sell them? That's the question. People are always telling me, well, why don't you grow dragon fruit? And why don't you grow, this amazing new thing, or cocoa or something? Okay, great. But who's going to sell it for me? Because farmers like to farm. They don't want to have to deal with the next step. And I had to start a whole separate company for my coffee in order to sell it, to process it and sell it and market it. That cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars already to get that up and going on an experiment. Most people can't do that.
Well, and I think too, like most people don't realize that the raw material sells for a certain price, right? So the coffee cherry may sell for a certain price, and I'm just going to throw $1 out there as an example. Whereas the bean ready to roast could sell for $1.50, $2, $2.50. So the difference in the two, and you being able to take that cherry in your office and turn it into this higher value could make up that difference of what you're paying out of pocket.
Well, it has to
grow lemons.
It has to, if it's going to be a commercial crop.
Right.
It has to.
Right.
This is not our hobby. This is our business. In order to be able to pay the expenses associated with our land, it has to make money.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point.
When you talk about sustainability, you always have to throw in that that financial portion of it, because no farm is sustainable unless it makes money.
Yeah. And So what do you see? I mean, there's a whole other piece of this, and we've kind of talked about it here and there a little bit, but there's the ability to increase, the value going from the cherry to the bean ready to roast, right? That's one layer of you being able to make up the difference and have sustainable farming in every sense of the word. Then there's this whole other layer of revenue that, we're starting to hear that the county is interested in supporting, and that's the tourism portion of it, right? Because like you pointed out, how come everybody else can use our beautiful farmland, our beautiful ag industry, because it is an industry, to support their tourist businesses, but the farmers can't, right? Because that would be a whole other layer.
Right.
Coffee farm visits, coffee tastings,
Well,
coffee events.
and I'll tell you what, on my coffee farm tours, I'll make more on a weekend doing a coffee tour than I will make all year on lemons.
Wow.
So it's 1 acre, so it's not supporting the farm, but
Right.
still, there's an interest there. People want this. And right now our hands are really tied for what we can do. And also, well, like if you're going to have weddings, if you get the permit, okay, so if you're going to do weddings right now, the permitting process is extensive and extremely costly. So you need to be guaranteed that you can do these events. It's your business now.
Right.
If you just want to do a little side here and there, like what I'm doing, then you maybe don't need to go through all of that stuff but you're very restricted. I can't provide food. I can't do it indoors. It all has to be outdoors. As soon as you move anything indoors, that's like kicks off a totally different situation. Yeah. So it would be nice. I mean, I would love to do coffee tastings on the farm as a regular deal indoors. That's not going to affect the landscape. That's not going to affect the view. If anything, it's going to bring more value to the area because it's going to bring outside money in. Taxes are going to be, it's going to bring, whenever I have people at the farm, I always say, can I give you recommendations on a restaurant? Or why don't you go to downtown Santa Paula? It's charming. I am supporting the local businesses as well because I'm bringing people in. They're coming from a day and they want to see what else is here while they're here.
And you're able to do it in a way that what we were talking about, the potential conflicts, right? Where you are going to be able to time when you have to take care of your plants to not have tours.
Yeah.
You have the control then. You're able to then can control where people go so that you don't run into food safety law violations.
Well, for example, with every pesticide you spray, there is a re-entry interval that you have to wait before you're allowed to come back in, even to irrigate, to do anything, even a worker.
And that's for public safety.
And that's for everybody's safety. Well, if you spray and 12 hours later, somebody comes walking by because they're at their next door bike path, whatever, and they walk in, now the farmer is the one that's in violation of not meeting that reentry interval.
Whereas if we could make it a little more streamlined, and make it so that farmers could be the ones driving the ag tourism.
Well, we could mitigate our liability in lots of ways.
Right.
Right. I mean, we need to make sure that our tourists are safe, number one.
Right. Right. Well, and, I think, too, that farmers also would be able to bring a whole level of knowledge, like addressing that one child's question, right? When do the stickers grow on the avocados? If it were part of a tour where the farmer is bringing the class in or whatnot, those questions get answered versus adjacent land uses, which are fantastic for pointing out that we have a beautiful view.
But they're not experts in the area of agriculture.
Exactly, and they're not coordinating with the farmers to become so.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, we all have to work together, but us being allowed to do that is going to help them do what they want to do as well.
Absolutely.
Because we can do it, we can work together, and it'll be even stronger.
I mean, why not have something where, okay, you've got that bike path, but with stops along the way, controlled by the farmers.
Oh yeah, a little fruit stand.
Exactly.
That's a little coffee stand. That sounds lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we could really have something special here if we just loosen up a teeny tiny bit. We don't want a big development. I don't want that. I don't think most people want that. But how cool would it be to have a thriving agritourism industry here?
Right. And now, when the county is ready to change those rules, they are going to bring it to that Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee, right? So you guys are going to have the ability to weigh in.
I hope so.
Well, that's what we're going to advocate for sure, for sure. So I just want to jump to something completely different, but again, like you mentioned, you and I are both involved in a fantastic organization, the Ventura County chapter of California Women for Agriculture. And one of the conversations that we had a couple of months ago was that something happened around the time of the Thomas Fire. And after the Thomas Fire, when people think historically of agriculture and multi-generation farming, right, they think father to son, father to son. And that changed after the Thomas Fire, and you were part of that. So
yeah.
Could
you
you
can
talk
see me
about that? I know.
Because I was thinking about this in the car on the way over here, and I got really excited. It's that feeling when you're first in love and you get giddy and you're so excited to see people, and it's just everything's good in the world. And that's how it is when I'm around these women, because they're so incredible. You can't help but feel empowered and like you could conquer the world because you got someone who has your back, and I think that this is the golden age of women in farming in Ventura County. Like, we are rocking it right now. Women Ag Commissioner, Women Farm Bureau President, we got you in collab. We've got all of these women running their family farms, and not only that, but taking leadership positions within agriculture. And also, the men have been rock stars too within this. I was really worried coming into this such a male-dominated industry, because I've worked in other industries, maybe not male-dominated, and I did not get the welcome that I got here. So these men here are progressive men. They want what's best for our community. They're family, oriented people, and it's been such a great experience.
And I actually want to second that. I don't come from a multi-generation, farming family. I have my little backyard garden, but I understand my limitations, and my lack of knowledge. And I have to say that everyone in the farming community has gone out of their way to help me, to educate me, to entertain my probably, ridiculous questions at times, or re-explain things or point things out to me. And that's been, just hands down, men and women. But what I especially love is that after the Thomas Fire, there was a group of you that daughters that gave up high-powered, professional careers to return to Ventura County, and where I kind of think of them as the street sign names, right?
They are.
There is a representative from almost every family that the rest of us, Ventura County residents see as like, oh, I know that name from that street.
Oh, you would recognize these names for sure.
And
because our ancestors were the ones that built the community.
Exactly.
There's a reason why their names are on schools or they're on streets. It's because they were impactful. They invested in the community.
Right.
After the Thomas fire, gosh, it's one of those things where you have this huge loss. I mean, this is your family legacy. This is the thing you would pack up in your car with you if you could. And it's now burned down. I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. But from those ashes grew this thing that was just so cool. So it kind of started off, my dad went to a meeting and he met Catherine Pinkerton. And he came back and said, you need to meet this lady. And so we set up a blind date at Rabelais in Santa Paula. And we met each other, and it was like an instant connection, like you just met your person, And we were like, this is cool. And so we brought on Helen McGrath, we brought on Rachel Kimball, and others now, and it's just been so cool. I don't think a day goes by where we're not texting each other. Yesterday I found a box of rattlesnake rattles.
Oh.
And I had somebody to share that with that would get it, when my well broke, I had somebody to call and say, who do you use to fix this? I had answers. When I have questions, I have people to go to. Not just them, but their parents, their dads, their moms who have generations of experience. So coming in with that, I mean, we're unstoppable. I feel like we're unstoppable right now because we love what we're doing. And you're right, we all came from high-powered jobs. You would, if you looked on paper, this would definitely be a professional downgrade for all of us. But I'll tell you what, it's not. It's more challenging than any job I've ever had, and it's more stimulating as well. But it's just different. And instead of wearing suits, we're wearing jeans and boots.
A little more comfortable.
It is. We are all scratched up and we're a mess and we're always dirty. But it's just different and it's fun and it can be lonely farming. You're by yourself a lot of the time. So to have a group of women and then to get involved with CWA, California Women for Agriculture, it was again like I felt it growing all over again with now a bigger network of women like you and just Melinda Beardsley, Melanie Capoletto, just Lisa Fox, just Brianne Wickham, 11's family. Like there's so many farming families involved and we're all like coming together with this common goal to just rock agriculture in this area.
Get agriculture sustainable now and through the future.
Oh yeah, and I think when you gather women, we have traditionally, we work together, we're collaborators just naturally, I think. And so it's been great. I think we're able to do stuff that hasn't been able to be done in the past because we're working together more. And we're willing to work with organizations we've traditionally not been maybe enemies with, like environmental groups and ag have traditionally not gotten along, but I think that's changing. I think that we're willing, we look at it because we're moms, we're sisters, we're daughters. We really look at the world in a a mama bear sense. Like we want to protect what we have here from a community standpoint, not just from our own little little pocket. So I think that we're just coming at it from a different angle.
I think there's an opportunity for women to tap into maybe more of that nurturing side through agriculture, right?
Well, we can connect with people too. Like I can connect with a mom who's so pro-environment through our kids, you know, because we're both moms, because we both want the next generation to be healthy and safe.
Right. Well, I think I'm excited to be, to have been, welcomed into part of the group, and I'm really looking forward to.
But too, you've been great.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how, through this collaboration and through the talents that you all bring in from your previous careers, how we are going to address some of these questions and some of these challenges. I think the path ahead is very, very rosy.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of potential
exciting.
and a lot of things to hope for.
I think so too.
But anyhow, I want to thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation. We are going to bring you back because we've got to talk about insurance. We've got to talk about, the stuff before the Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee, all that kind of stuff. But we are definitely bringing you back. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Ag on the Edge. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes.